Well, it looks like everything's working now. I apologize for any delays. There were some crazy technical issues, but here we are, so I want to go through and get this information out. Today is September 20th, 2024. My name is Tom Toft. I am a qualified tax expert. I am with the West Michigan Low Income Taxpayer Clinic, which is part of Legal Aid of Western Michigan. And today I'd like to talk about how to report gambling income and losses on a tax return. But before we get started, I've got to say that this is not legal advice. Nothing in this presentation is a substitute for a private consultation with an attorney regarding a legal problem. The information in this presentation relates to the current state of tax law, and tax laws can change. And quickly, that this is not for people who are self-employed in the business of gambling. There are different rules applied to those engaged in gambling as a trade or business. Now, I got that out of the way. I want to talk about what a Form W-2G certain gambling winnings is first. Before we get into where you report it on your return, it's important to understand what a W-2G is. This is a document that gambling organizations send to gamblers showing information on winnings. So if you have a win, the casino, the online sports betting organization, could be Michigan Lottery, they can give you a form saying, here are your winnings. They'll show if anything was withheld. They give your name of the institution, a date on it. And it's very similar to like a W-2 or a 1099. It's just a document saying you won this much money. And importantly, it doesn't show any losses on it. So there are rules when this is sent out. So the IRS instructs when a casino or the lottery, anybody has to actually issue a W-2G. It only requires a Form W-2G to be issued when you receive certain amounts of winnings or tax withholding is required. So a W-2G has to be sent if there's $600 or more in gambling winnings and the payout is at least 300 times the amount of the wager, except for bingo, keno, slot machines, and poker tournaments. A W-2G has to be issued if there is $1,200 or more in gambling winnings from bingo or slot machines. A W-2G has to be issued if there are winnings produced by wagers that are more than $5,000 from a poker tournament. W-2G will have to be issued if there's $1,500 or more in proceeds, that's the amount of winnings less the amount of wagers, from keno, or when it'll be sent if any gambling winnings are subject to federal income tax withholding. You just kind of glance at the screen about the general amounts, right? $600, $1,200, if it's poker, $5,000, $1,500. Is when you get over these amounts and these requirements is when these Form W-2Gs are sent. If you have a win that's under that, there's a good chance you're just not going to get a form in the mail, that's W-2G, letting you know about that winning. So why do I want to talk about W-2G and those amounts? Well, it's because all gambling income has to be reported. Let me say that again. Tax rules require that all your gambling income is reported on your federal tax return. It doesn't matter whether or not you receive documentation like a W-2G showing it was won. So many people have small gambling wins through the year where no Form W-2G is ever issued. But even though the IRS is not in the business of chasing down tax on small wins, all that gambling income, even the small wins, are still supposed to be reported. So if you have lots of smaller wins throughout the year, every week you go to a casino, do some betting, and you win $100 here, 200 there, that's going to add up over the year. You're not going to get a Form W-2G. Well, you're still supposed to report that on your tax return. And if the IRS finds out that you got the income that's not on the return, you can expect an automated letter from them asking about it and proposing tax on it. So it's important to remember the general rule that, all your gambling income is reported on your federal tax return. It's also important to note that you can't just reduce gambling winnings by your gambling losses and report the difference. So again, if you're gambling throughout the year, every week you do a little bit. End of the year comes around, you can't just say, well, I'm in the hole for the year, so I don't need to report this because I don't really have any uh, winnings over what I've gambled. Some folks think this way. They say, I'm not going to put it on the return. Um, if you do that, and the IRS knows you've got gambling winnings, you're going to get a letter, and they're going to ask about it, and there's going to be a bit of a process. And if that comes up, you can call us. We'll try to help you through that. But it's important, again, that it's said you must report the full amount of your winnings as income. So all that gambling goes on as income. But to claim your losses up to what you won, you have to do that as an itemized deduction. So this gets into how you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to report all your gambling winnings. If you got losses, you report those as an itemized deduction. And because of that, it's important that your records track your winnings separately from your losses. And records can include wagering tickets, canceled checks, credit records, receipts from gaming facilities, things like that. The IRS also suggests keeping a diary of your gambling. So where exactly do you report this on the return? Well, you report gambling income on Schedule 1. Schedule 1 is attached to your Federal Form 1040. And if you look here where I circled it, there's actually a line labeled gambling. So that would be where you report all of your gambling income, regardless of whether you got W-2Gs or not. Based on your records you're supposed to be keeping, you put your total amount of wins on Schedule 1, and that will flow your 1040. But for your losses, you report your gambling losses on Schedule A. Gambling losses up to the amount of winnings are reported as other itemized deductions on Schedule A. So there's not like a line on Schedule A that says gambling losses. But this is where you report it. If you don't itemize and don't put down your gambling losses, then you can't claim them. So I got to reiterate, if you do itemize, you must be able to support gambling losses with an accurate diary, receipts, tickets, entry fees, wager statements, etc. And unfortunately, most people don't itemize. So if you claim a standard deduction, you're going to lose twice. Once for losing the bets, and again for not being able to deduct the losses. That's just the way the rules work. Back in 2018, they increased the standard deduction to a level where most people just don't go through and itemize anymore, right? So if you don't itemize, then you still have to report your winnings on that Schedule 1. Hey, I got all this money in, but you're not going to be able to get the benefit of any of those losses. So I need to mention that you got to be aware of this. And because of these things, it's a good idea to have someone help with your tax returns. It's probably a good idea in general, right? If you go to a preparer, whether you're paying or a free tax preparation, if you gambled, let them know. They can ask you the appropriate questions to sort that out going on the return. But for a lot of the folks we help, low-income taxpayers, free tax preparation is going to be available. That type of free tax prep is especially available for those with low or moderate income, disabilities, limited English proficiency, or those that are age 60 plus. And you can look into the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance and Tax Counseling for the Elderly programs. There's a link here to the IRS. If you go to that link, it'll have numbers you can call to find the local ones. I have an online tool to find them. You can also check out United Way's My Free Taxes, which is a good source for free tax preparation help. And during the filing season, you can call 211 on your phone. You'll get through to a call center. And if you qualify for free tax prep, they'll schedule a time for you to go and have that done. Most of these tax services are only open during the tax filing season, but some are open year round. And again, if you've been gambling and you go have your taxes done, let the preparer know that so they can ask the questions and get all the details out so you have an accurate tax return filed. I've got a page here with some links on it. These are IRS materials, publications talking about putting it in the income, how you deduct it. Some of this talks about like publication 525, gets in some details, I think, on record keeping, or maybe it's 529, I guess, in the record keeping. But if you look down at the bottom of this, the very last link is the IRS's interactive tax assistance. They actually have a tool online that's interactive that's titled, How Do I Claim My Gambling Winnings and or Losses? That's where if you go to this link, you click it, it'll ask you questions about your individual situation, amounts you want, how you want it, what it was, and it'll actually tell you how you're supposed to claim those. So if you do decide to go down your own, and again, I use a professional, but if you want to go down your own, the IRS Interactive Tax Assistant could be very helpful for you to kind of double check that you're actually reporting gambling income and losses correctly. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, given that there are no questions, then I appreciate all of you taking time out of your day. Have a good day, and we will see you on the next one. Bye now.